Hello and welcome to No Spin. I'm Nidhi Razdan. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, has taken over Twitter, buying the social media giant for $44 billion US. It is incredible how quickly this story moved. Only 3 weeks ago, we first heard about Musk's stake in Twitter, and days later, he announced the takeover bid. The public company will now go private after the deal is sealed later this year. But at a time when social media platforms are under increased scrutiny for disinformation, fake news and hate speech, what does this actually mean for Twitter itself and for all of us? Musk says that he's a free speech absolutist and in the past has said he does not favor the kind of moderation Twitter does. He wasn't happy when Donald Trump was banned from the platform. So will his being on board be good or bad for Twitter? The jury is out, but here's a look at how the big takeover finally happened.
The world's richest man has got what he wanted. Twitter. For $44 billion, almost a half of it raised against his own equity. Musk, who got rich inventing cutting-edge space and EV technologies, tweeted this, along with his plan to change Twitter. He considers Twitter the bedrock of a functioning democracy. Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. He's promised to make the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeat the spam bots and perhaps controversially authenticate all humans. Twitter will go from public-owned to private by the end of the year, as Elon Musk's plan to acquire Twitter is approved by the Twitter board, still subject to regulatory approval. Musk believes that Twitter should follow local laws.
What I can tell you as a general matter, no matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause.
India, with 23.6 million, has the third highest Twitter base after US, where the relatively small platform punches above its weight. Twitter has repeatedly gone against the government over censorship. However, Musk's suggestion of adhering to local laws suggests that Twitter will follow the Indian government's policies despite the controversy over censorship and curbing of free speech. The Indian IT minister told NDTV, and I quote, that I wish Elon Musk the very best. Our goals and expectations of accountability, safety and trust of all intermediaries operating in India remains unchanged. Musk's acquisition of Twitter has happened in less than 3 months since he began buying its stock. Twitter founder Jack Dorsey tweeted his support for Musk, saying, "In principle, I don't believe anyone should own or run Twitter. Solving the problem of it being a company, however, Elon is the single solution I trust." Dorsey added that Twitter's dependence on the Wall Street and ad revenue was detrimental to the platform. However, Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder and fellow multi-billionaire, suggested that China might have gained leverage over Twitter. The platform has been blocked in China since 2009, but China is the second largest market for Musk-owned Tesla and one of the largest suppliers of batteries to the company. While the acquisition might have been agreed upon, by all appearances, it looks like the Musk-Twitter controversy will continue to be in the spotlight for the future. Rubina Mungia, NDTV.
So is Elon Musk going to be good or bad for Twitter? Joining us on the program tonight, a terrific panel. We have Mishi Chaudhary, who is a technology lawyer, joining us on Zoom. Jitin Jain, cybersecurity expert. Nikhil Pava, the expert on all things tech. And also Pranay Patole, who is with the Tata Consultancy Services, a software developer, a big Elon Musk fan. And Raheel Khurshid, who headed Twitter India's politics and government section some years ago, is also joining us in a little while from now. Mishi Chaudhary, let me ask you first. In a nutshell, is this a good or a bad thing?
It depends who you ask, right? If there are people of Elon Musk and Tesla, there is a tendency to think that this is going to extend to Twitter as well. If you're on the right side, as US has a way of looking at binary politics, then you're thinking this is a great thing for free speech because some of their leaders have been banned, a question which is on everybody's mouth about whether Mr. Trump's account will be restored. If you're on the left, in the US, the discussion is all about spread of misinformation, political leaders actually using the platform But I think buying Twitter, which is going to take 4 to 6 months to wrap up the deal, Mr. Musk will face the reality of the free speech talk, because tech big shots, whether it is Zuckerberg or it is Sundar Pichai, have learned again and again that talk of free speech is not as simple. And there are going to be a lot of pressures from the governments who tend to be very picky about how they want to use the platforms, as well as use their own laws for the benefits in the developing world. And also what we have seen in the 2016 election or during COVID, the kind of harms which the platforms can cause if they intervene too little, and when they intervene too much, then everybody has opinions about it as well.
Right.
So I would say a change is good, but we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. And as you said, he might get a reality check once this deal is actually wrapped up. Nikhil Pava, how do you see this development? Let's talk about the free speech issue first, because here is a man who says that he's an absolutist on free speech. And we know, we saw his tweets when Donald Trump was banned, and, he hit out at Silicon Valley at that time. Therefore, are you concerned that the kind of moderation we see on Twitter right now, which many say is still not enough, would actually be diluted?
We'll have to see, Nidhi, because, at TED a couple of weeks ago, Musk actually said that, there's incitement to violence, or, for example, if someone shouts fire in a theater kind of a situation, those should be stopped. But he was very clear that in areas where, it's one side versus the other, or which are what he called gray areas, then the content should be allowed to stay up. So what does that mean? If someone's harassing someone online, should that content be allowed to stay up? If there is racism, or if there's, communalism, should that be allowed to stay up? So we'll see, what happens. But the other thing that he's talked about is that he wants to address spam bots and misinformation and disinformation. And in that context, my sense is that he's going to look at a technology solution to the problem. And his solution is that they want to verify all users. And, in India, there's been talk about Aadhaar authentication for social media users, and that would be a disaster if you ask me. Who wants to give social media platforms more of our data? And especially our ID is number one. But also, this also impacts vulnerable communities that use, anonymity and pseudonymity to say what they want to say, but also protect themselves against a backlash that might hit them. So I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating when this, and I was sort of playing a game of sorts, right? And you can do that with your friends. Take a free speech situation and figure out what would Elon Musk do in that situation? Like, for example, if the Indian government, like they did last year, allegedly gave an order under Section 69 of the IT Act for blocking accounts, and some of those blocking orders were not legitimate under Indian law, Twitter pushed back then. What would Musk do? Nigeria banned Twitter. What would Musk do in that situation? If there was communal speech on platforms that were leading to riots offline, what would Elon Musk do? Yeah. We don't have answers to these questions, but
we can only speculate based on his track record. You're right. I mean, we really don't know how this is going to play out. But Raheel Khurshid, how do you feel about this today? What is the impact, as someone who worked with Twitter for so long, how do you see this, potentially changing the social media platform?
Nidhi, thanks for having me. Apologies, I'm at an airport, so there might be some ambient noise. Apologize for that. Look, Twitter struggled with management for a while, right? Like it's an open sector. It IPO'd at close to 76. It then tanked to 11. It's now at about. He's made an offer at about 54 odd dollars per share. I think for the longest time it has there's company, my former colleagues to a bunch of whom are still at Twitter. I think the opinion is kind of like divided as to whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, not that there's a choice here, right? Like the offer was made, it was accepted, and that's fundamentally that. Quite honestly, I feel like in exactly how Nikhil was pointing out and Mishi was pointing out, that we don't really know what the contours of Mr. Musk's leadership are going to do for Twitter. In exactly the same way, we don't know what his management style is going to be. There's some amount of reporting as to how he manages his other companies, Tesla, for example, and some lessons could be drawn from there. But on the other hand, we do know that he is really, really good friends with Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. So I think that some of that is going to come into play in context to the management style that he's going to adopt. Within Twitter, they've been told that there's still no clarity as to what is going to happen over the next course of the 6 months. But everyone is hoping for the best, basically.
All right, Pranay Patola, you're very excited about Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. I saw your tweets. Why is that? What makes you so optimistic?
So first of all, thank you, Nidhi, for having me on. It's an honor. And so basically, I'm pretty optimistic for what Elon will do to the platform. He will, eliminate the spam bots, which have been a massive problem since a long time. He will bring the edit functionality. He will, make the verification process much more simplified and seamless, and basically authenticate all the people that are humans. Obviously, the free speech thing is something that he is claiming a lot. So I'm pretty optimistic for what Elon has in store for us. And within a few months, I think we will get to see his actions.
Right, but Jitin Jain, just to come to you on this, the difficulties that lie. For instance, is it going to be so easy to clean up the spam bots, this human authentication that he talks about? A lot of people, as was pointed out earlier, are very happy to be anonymous on this platform. Of course, that also gives them a leeway to perhaps be more abusive and more toxic on it. But is it going to be so simple for him to clean this up?
No, it is not simple, but it is definitely not very difficult, because Elon said that, he's going to try and clean all the bots on Twitter, and at least if he doesn't do it, he will die trying it. So Elon has been raising three fundamental issues. One is of free speech, second is of hate speech, third is of transparency. So if he walks the talk and decides to deliver on these promises, then Twitter as a platform will have a very different shape and a very different future. We've been talking about Elon's view of complying with the local laws and taking off the violent content online. But you see, this is the same Elon Musk which has gone out of the way, which has taken, extreme risks to deploy Starlink in Ukraine so that Ukraine stays connected. He challenged Putin for a one-to-one, hand fight. But at the same time, despite having a very pro-Ukrainian view, when he was asked that, will you take off the entire Russian domains online on Starlink? Will you ban the Russian content? He said, no. I will only do it if I'm being forced to do it on a gunpoint over my head. He won't do it. So he's been a great votary of free speech. He will take sides. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see whether if he has allowed Putin to stay on the platform, he has decided not to ban Russian content, then I'm very sure that Donald Trump is coming back soon, and we will have less censorship on Twitter. Now, second is the issue of, and this business of shadow bans, and demotivating some accounts, just shadow banning some content, this all will disappear, because Elon has also been speaking about transparency in Twitter algorithms. People should have a right to know why Twitter shows the content, on what basis. Why should I see hate content, violent content, romantic content, or political content? And if I'm seeing a political content of which political party, on what premise? If I'm seeing an ad, on what basis? So if he brings in the transparency in the very algorithm of Twitter, if he decides to make the Twitter open source, we will have a very, very different platform. And the business of, and this whole accusations of somebody trying to, ban some political accounts, BJP versus Congress, all these things will disappear. Now, third is the issue of hate speech. So, you see, if
but
you
Jitin,
take
can
off,
I ask you, what do you think he would do if the government of India said, we want X, Y, Z Twitter handle banned, which our government and other governments have done too? What do you think he would do?
Nidhi, I think there are two different issues we have to look at. If government of India asked to ban certain 100 accounts which are creating law and order problem, he would, as a private company at the end of the day, which wants to be in business, will comply. But if government of India asks that you take off the account of Rahul Gandhi or some political leader, I don't think he will comply. Because according to him, this premise of even Putin giving a nuclear threat, he has allowed it to stay on, he would allow it to stay on Twitter because that is a speech of public importance. So I think the political speech will be treated very differently from the hate speech by ordinary people. So they will, he will comply with the longer laws as long as they don't censor the political speech.
Let me just come to this issue of censorship. Raheel Khurshid, there's been a lot of controversy, for instance, even over Trump's Twitter ban and whether that actually violates the fundamentals of free speech. Yes, of course, he was tweeting a lot of disinformation, but was a ban taking it too far? Even now, in the way what is coming out of Russia is in a sense censored by big platforms. Therefore, does the free speech argument actually, does it get taken away from them?
Well, absolutely. I think, there is a lot of absolutist positioning around the issue of free speech. And I think both Nikhil and Mishi are way better experts at talking about it. But I think there is a very simplistic understanding of how Twitter arrives at these issues. It's not that Trump got banned because of one tweet, right? Like, he had a history of disinformation. He had multiple strikes against him. And there was cause, as US investigators are now finding out, that there was basically an association of offline violence with his online speech. So that's the context of his ban. In context to how Mr. Musk is going to, now that the company is privately held, he said that he's going to uphold free speech. We don't know what that means. I'm not sure he quite honestly understands the complexity of regulating speech on a platform like Twitter in multiple complicated political contexts. Say India, for example, with multiple languages where the same word could mean different things in different intonations, for example. And it's not like, the trust and safety teams at Twitter or other teams tasked with these issues, very, very complex issues, have been basically just sitting around doing nothing. These are really complicated problems, as Facebook, for example, is finding out with the Supreme Court approach to these issues. And I'm not sure what Mr. Musk is going to come up with. I don't think there's a magical solution to this, as many of Mr. Musk's supporters would like us to believe. There isn't. I've spent time at the company. I know for a fact that the moment tweet is reported, the process of analyzing whether that tweet, like what category and what bucket that tweet falls into, and what should happen to the writer of that tweet, that process is a complicated one, and I'm not sure that process is going to be downgraded overnight because the company has a new owner.
Okay, that's interesting. Mishi Chaudhary, do you want to sort of just expand on that? I mean, Raheel believes that there's a sort of set process in place which won't be so easy for even Elon Musk to change. But there are still concerns that on hate speech in particular, even whatever little checks and balances are there, they may be diluted.
So what I think is that in the past 10 years, a lot has changed also. And we've seen these repeated confrontations between the lofty, high-minded principles of Silicon Valley's founding generation of social media companies and what the messy reality of the world is. It is all very well for all of us to talk about free speech absolutism. In fact, in the beginning, many years ago, now I will be aging myself, but when people came online, even in India, they used to say, we have First Amendment rights, nobody can take down anything. And as a lawyer, I didn't want to be the party pooper to say First Amendment is a US constitutional right. So people always thought at that time that they could come online and say anything and there were no real life consequences. We have seen, especially in India, but now everywhere else in the world also, the political parties know how to monetize as well as weaponize these tools. We have seen what online harassment for women means on these platforms. We've also seen a lot of child sexual abuse material, nudity, various other things. I think the important point here is what Jack Dorsey also pointed out, that Twitter has been sporadically a profitable company. And when you go public, then you're not only thinking about your role in terms of public discourse, but you're also answerable to Wall Street. Each quarter, you're supposed to tell them that that's the money we've made. And now it goes public, now it goes private with Mr. Musk. There is much more control over it. And one single person has much more decision-making power than a public company has. That's why when you, in your earlier story, when Mr. Chandrasekhar is speaking about accountability, safety, that to me reads like, well, we are going to keep enforcing and put our pedal on the fact that take down when we want, or tell us that what are the data, what data when we want access to in order to get something for crime resolution or something else. They will continue on the same path.
Nikhil
and
Pava,
it's going to be much more complicated.
Nikhil Pava, would it be good if everybody who was on Twitter was verified as a human? To put it, I mean, I don't know how else to put it.
I don't like that idea. I think there is a certain amount of anonymity which is useful. And I think that there are communities where that is useful, like I said earlier. But Nidhi, I wanted to make 3 points in response to some of the points that were made. Firstly, in terms of banning accounts, Musk has gone on record to say that he's opposed to banning of accounts, but he prefers a cool down period of sorts. Now, that won't work in India because one, there is accounts can be banned, but also secondly, users can also appeal bans and appeal against the cool down periods under the IT rules. Secondly, I think when you look at one major move that I think I would like to see, there is this project that Twitter started called Blue Sky, which is about decentralization, that allows for self-authentication and allows you to use your profile to, hop across multiple social networks, which will remove centralization and centralized control for Twitter. Perhaps that's one of the things that Jack Dorsey has been championing. And let's not forget that Jack Dorsey has had his issues with the Twitter board repeatedly. And that's why he's backing Musk's takeover, because that independent board, which was again accountable to shareholders and Wall Street, now that board is going to be disbanded. The third thing is, I don't think we should purely view this as Elon Musk's contribution to free speech. He's in it to make money. I want to see the kind of product changes that will take place in Twitter in terms of new monetization methods, whether there's going to be more push for subscription, whether some of the video and products that used to exist like Vine or their live streaming product are going to come back with monetization, whether there's going to be Twitter Spaces is going to have advertising or not. So let's see what Musk does from a monetization perspective to increase the value of the business. Right. Because eventually if he's bought
it's all about the money. Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to sell it.
Yeah. Pranay, you had your hand up. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So firstly, I wanted to clarify that not all humans will be authenticated. He has said that there is this Twitter Blue subscription, which is, I guess, $3 a month. And only the people who pay for that subscription will be verified. And you as a human will have a choice to not be verified. So you can maintain that anonymity. And secondly, like all these major massive media outlets, they are all backed by some or the other business owner, right? So how do these business owners influence the news on these media outlets or publications? So for example, Times of India is privately owned by Jain Brothers, or Network 18 is run by Reliance Media Group. So does that mean that Reliance Media Group can influence what is broadcasted?
Actually,
or
that's a great point.
On,
because Jitin, I'm just giving you the last word on that. The fact is that if you look at the media space today, both in India and now social media and mainstream platforms, it's all corporate owned. I mean, Amazon, Washington Post, Twitter, Elon Musk, and the names that even Pranay has spoken of in India. So what does that mean for genuine free speech?
Nidhi, that's the most excellent point you have brought out. I mean, in the post-Ukraine world, I think we are all living in a fool's paradise debating all this issue of hate speech and free speech. Look, every platform which has claimed to be of public service, public importance and defending of free speech has been weaponized by the West. You look at the conflict in Russia. Facebook changed the policy that if people are calling for lynching of Putin or murder or assassination of Putin, it is fine. So, and most of the Western platforms are pulling out of Russia. And SWIFT, Russia was thrown out of SWIFT. I mean, I support Ukraine, but there is a reality today that every platform, a technology platform, will be weaponized by the state which they are based and located. So tomorrow, just take an example. If there was to be an internet ban in Kashmir and Elon Musk was operating Starlink in India, do you think he will censor? No, he refused to do that in Ukraine. So it's a very different world. Every platform will be weaponized. Right. And this argument of banning Donald Trump because he was spreading fake news and he was inciting violence, Now, Putin has killed millions of people. He is threatening the world with nuclear weapons. He is calling Bucha atrocities, killings, mass murders as fake. In fact, he's calling the whole Ukraine as fake. And Kremlin accounts are being allowed to on Twitter. Sergei Lavrov and Dmitry Peskov, who is the Kremlin spokesman, they are spreading propaganda, hate speech, violence, fake news every day. And
so you're saying inconsistent,
they are there.
right?
So I think we are in a different
inconsistencies
world.
and double standards, depending, I guess, on the politics that's playing out. It's fascinating. I'm completely out of time.
Very much right.
I'm completely out of time. I'd like to invite you all again when this deal actually happens and we get a sense of what shape Twitter is going to take from here onwards. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on That Big Story.